Hello, my name's Philippa Waller.
My name is Penelope Waller, and we are two of the directors at 4D Human Being.
And welcome to the 4D Human Being podcast. What's it all about, Pen?
It's all about your personal and professional relationships. It's about your communication skills, how you lead, how you work and build teams, how you are looking after yourself and your well-being, and how you are much more at choice. What do we mean by that?
Well, sometimes we can get a little caught in patterns in life, and we can all be a little bit on our automatic pilot. So 4D Human Being is all about helping us get back to choice and being a four-dimensional human being. And your fourth dimension, of course,
is intention. So whether it's about your impact, your leadership style, your team dynamics, whether it's about your well-being, whether it's about your communication or your presentation skills, anything that involves human beings interacting with other human beings, 4D Human Being are here to help.
we're going to take a deep dive and look at some tools, insights, theories that are going to help you go from a 3D human doing to a 4D human being, so that you can happen to the world rather than the world simply happening to you.
We were looking very white and beige today, Phil.
Well, I nearly put on a beige jacket over a white t-shirt, so we were nearly identical. So there we go.
Last throes of summer.
Yeah, last throes of summer. Actually, it's very grey here, but the garden's delighted. So
yes,
you know,
can imagine.
mean, can I super segue with that? That
oh my, we're straight
in because maybe we'll come back to a little intro chat. There is a super segue there around, you know, for one part of the world, the rain is wonderful. For another part, the sun is. And, you know, we're going to be talking about teams for the next 3 weeks. And, you know, you cannot please everybody all of the time. You've got different needs. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's sunny. I mean, the analogies could run and run here. And sometimes you need rain to make the team grow. Anyway, we'll come back to that. But I'm excited, really excited to talk about teams. And of course, like any of our conversations, it's not just professional, because in teams, it's like being in a family.
Totally, 100%.
Or a group of friends. And all of those patterns and dynamics really show up. And,
yes,
you know,
exactly.
We don't sit on our high cloud here at 4D. We sit as human beings as well.
Well, it's really interesting, isn't it? The family analogy, because of course we do very often talk about the fact that you get shaped as a human being based on the tribe that you're in, based on the family that you're in. I mean, there's research saying, you know, depending on the order of which you were born in a sibling hierarchy, that will sort of, to some extent, define some qualities about you. And of course, there is a truth to that also in a team, in terms of who you are, how you show up, who you're becoming. So it's both how you show up in a team, but of course, remember, the team is also shaping you.
Absolutely.
It's important stuff.
So exactly, you are, I'm going to say this because I just found it so funny. I think I sent it to you. It's it's slightly blue. So anybody with children listening, although I will abbreviate it, but I loved that it was a design of the word team in capital letters. And it said there's no I in team. But if you write the word team in big block capitals, the gaps in the A create an I. You know, a capital A, you've got like a dot and a line.
Oh, yes.
So it said there's no I in team except in the A hole. And I just thought it was absolutely brilliant.
That is brilliant.
Anyway, you're absolutely right. We bring our stuff to teams, and the team also pushes in on us. And I mean,
yeah.
I remember being in a group. I wouldn't call it a team. It was a group. I won't go into why I was in it, but the person running,
or why you defined it as a group.
Why I defined it as a group. You know, back in the history of time. But the person running the group, it was all male except me, and the person running the group said, "Oh, you know, sort of Philippa as the mother of the group." I was in my 20s, not a mother, and really didn't identify with that. And I thought, God, the group was certainly was really pulling me into a role that I didn't want. And it's a really good example of how we are navigating at a really fundamental dynamic level.
Yeah.
And a lot of resentment and anger that can build up might well be because you are being pushed into a role, be the helper or the one who always takes care of everybody or whatever it is that you resent. Actually, you don't want to be that role. Why should I?
Exactly.
Why should I? Is probably the language that will come up. Anyway, we're sort of diving into detail, but shall we sort of highlight the themes we're going to be looking at? So, I mean, it's the topic pulls me in. Do you know what I mean? Like, you really want to get stuck in.
Totally. And of course, we could talk for, endless episodes about teams. We have chosen kind of 3 specific areas to talk about over the coming weeks, which, again, as happens so often with our topics on the podcast, they seem to be so prevalent at the moment with our clients as well. Everyone's sort of coming back after the summer. So we're going to be looking at teams, team dynamics, and we're going to be looking at 3 specific topic areas, aren't we?
We're going to start today with trust and communication.
Do you know, it's a really funny word. We'll dive into it, obviously, but it's used a lot. And I don't think people really think much about what's behind that word.
And what it actually means to you individually, because it means different things, doesn't it?
Yes.
And I think we were saying last night with trust, you sort of hope you have it, and then you're disappointed when it goes, and you don't really know how you got it, and you don't know how to get it back. And we want to sort of it's like magic. It's like an ethereal thing. I think it's there. I hope it's there. It's a bit like a religion. I think I believe in trust, and then suddenly it lets you down. You're confused because hang on a minute. I thought trust would take care of this.
Yes, and if it goes, it's just
literally sucked down a vortex, like the costume change in Frozen the musical when her dress is just whipped through the hole in the stage. You're just like, that's gone.
It's gone.
So we're gonna. I was wearing trust, and now I'm naked. I don't know what happened there. So everything's.
God, I love that clip, Phil.
I watched
that
it.
clip about 1,000 times.
I know.
I'm obsessed with it.
Well, Pen, super segue me up right nice here, Laura, because you know why we love that. Because, I'm going to tell you why we love it so much and why, so many of those sort of documentaries.
For anyone who doesn't know, there's clips online of the Broadway version of Disney's Frozen, the musical. And the bit that's just gone viral is the bit where Elsa changes from her sort of princess costume into her icy queen costume. And obviously in the cartoon film of it, obviously it was
she just spins around and it's a cartoon.
But they've done it on the stage. It's just amazing.
Yeah, so Google it. The reason we love that, and the reason we love watching like the making of, there's a BBC Radio 4 show that I love, The Reunion, which goes back on events or shows or projects
behind the scenes
and brings people together, is because the feeling of creativity and collaboration coming together is overwhelming for us. It's like some sort of primal joy. Yeah. And so if you think about the number of pieces and the trust that the Elsa on stage has at that moment, that she's in the middle of crescendoing up into a high peak of her song,
let it go,
and if that dress doesn't change, if that dress doesn't let go, then the whole show is down the pan.
Well, and she's the one standing on the stage.
Exactly, Pen. It's such a wonderful analogy because she's exposed, she's out there, she's completely vulnerable, she's singing her heart out. You've got all these, not just an audience, children who want the magic. I mean, the stakes can be higher. And then you've got this one costume woman down there fumbling with a lock on a trap door and trying to find the right ribbon and string. Hopefully that's sewn on well enough to pull the dress off. Hopefully Elsa pulls her arms down by it because she's got her arms up, and then you almost can't see it. She just flicks her arms down so that they're straight, so she's like a pencil, so the dress can be, I mean, that
is teamwork.
It's so teamwork, and everybody needs to come together in that moment.
Yeah. And
that's why we love it.
And nobody can say at the bottom, they can't say, well, Elsa, you're not quite standing in the right position, so we can't do it down here. Like, there's no room for this isn't working for me.
Absolutely,
it's like, you've got to make this.
You've got to make this work. I mean, that's the piece I really love about the world of theatre and film. It's that piece, and when I talk to actors who've left the business, That's the piece they miss. It's not the applause.
Yeah.
It's not the awards. It's not the accolades. It's the collaboration in the rehearsal process and during the production. That's the magic. It's being in the room with other people who are all looking at making one thing brilliant.
Yeah.
You know,
which is a super segue in so many ways, Phil. In terms of the second episode, we're going to look at collaboration, and of course, in teams, ideally, you similarly do have that single or multiple, but aligned goals. You're all sort of moving in the same direction, which is what makes great teams work so well. Exactly.
Yeah.
The analogy of the theatre is perfect. So the first one is trust. The second one is collaboration. And then the third one.
Oh, and actually, I'm going to add to collaboration and being good to work with.
Yes.
And it's sort of taking responsibility for that ourselves, as opposed to why aren't they good to work with? How do we ensure we're good to work with? So we get more agency over this. And then the last one, we're going to look from toxic to healthy teams. And we're going to include in that leading teams. I mean, obviously, that's a real light touch because that's a whole other topic. But, you know, really recognising some of the toxic patterns. Because the other thing about teams, of course, like families, is it becomes the water in your goldfish bowl. Like, you know, the toxicity or the jibes or the little eye roll in the corner, or the person that you don't really work with or communicate with, or the person that you just have very spiky emails with, it starts getting normalised.
Yeah, totally.
And we can't see it anymore. And you don't maybe realise at a fully conscious level that you're working in a toxic strong, but in an unhealthy team. But actually, drip, 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 chip, chip, chip is going to have an impact on you. And suddenly you've got disgruntled people, you've got low productivity, low creativity, low collaboration. And then you're just running through all our two previous episodes, and it just all caves in. So
yeah. And in fact, in a way, you know, we talk about this as well in terms of leaders that one has worked for. In a way, even though it can be really tough to have a leader that you find really difficult, or working in a team that feels a little bit toxic or a little bit dysfunctional. Of course, they are very often where you learn some very important lessons in terms of how you show up and how you operate. I mean, if it's all plain sailing, it's quite difficult for us to develop and grow. So it can be useful as long as you're 100%. Conscious about what's happening and develop from it.
Well, do you know what, Per? There's a couple of things in that. You know, one is absolutely that it's owning your part in something. You know, it's the old, you know, in every team it takes two to tango. Like, and I love a tango, and it definitely takes two to tango.
You always manage to pull dance in, Phil.
And the other thing that's really interesting about that is, in a therapeutic sort of journey development relationship, quite often you find yourself having conversations around, with all of the development and personal work that you can do, there are some things that are really hard to know about yourself and change about yourself without working on them in relationship. You know, because you can conceive of the idea of, well, you know, next time I'm in a difficult relationship like that, I will. But you cannot develop that muscle until you're in it. So that's the gift that the difficult person in your team can offer you. Is such an opportunity for development, because they won't be the last to show up in your life, and the pattern will keep playing out. And as we always say, you're the one who's going to suffer. Yeah. And it's not easy. So I want to introduce this with love history and love. I heard the other day, I heard that somebody was saying, I couldn't really decide what to do at university. I think he was an American. So they created.
Yes.
And it was philosophy, psychology and history. And I went, that would be the dream. Would be the dream. Anyway. So listen to a lot of history podcasts and have gone right down a tunnel with both The Rest is History and We Have Ways of Making You Talk. And what's really interesting about listening to a lot of the stories around, they've done long episodes on sort of D-Day and Dunkirk and all kinds of, you know, different periods in history as well. What has struck me again and again and again is, yes, you need the right resources in a battle, and yes, you need all the equipment, and you need the truth, and you need the stuff, like in a team. You need the people, you need the resources. The times that it goes wrong, without fail, is when they've got poor communication and poor collaboration. I mean, without fail, even when you've got one side of a battle that are definitely the favourites, like way more people, way more pitchforks or guns or whatever it is they're fighting with, you know. But
can go downhill very quickly if there's no 100%.
But because you don't know where anyone else is. It's the else address. You don't know where the woman is who's going to pull your dress. It's over.
Yeah, and I think perhaps we don't really, we don't necessarily always recognise that
100%.
because of course we can very often think as individuals, perhaps we are experts or we know our stuff, or we've done this a million times. All of those things, which is there's a truth to that. Of course, that's important. But boy, there are some brilliant stories out there about when collaboration breaks down and the whole thing just falls to pieces.
Yeah, exactly.
It's remarkable how quickly things can fall apart.
And you're so right that I think we often, the debates when things get tough can be about, yes, being overworked, not having enough resources, not having enough people, having targets that are unrealistic. I mean, any number of things. But the way through always is great communication. And I think that gets missed as sort of, again, a bit like trust, a bit like, well, it's just the bit that just happens, doesn't it? Like that's just the bit we have to do to get the thing we want. But of course, you sort of need to flip it. If you do that well, you'll get the thing you want.
Yeah. We'll mention communication in terms of the pitfalls that we fall into maybe a little bit later in this podcast, because I was talking about it yesterday with some clients about the importance of communication to build trust. And there are some little pitfalls we fall into the corporate environment that it inadvertently do the opposite to what we think it's going to do. So we might talk about
let's start with the absolute foundation of trust. And if I very quickly, because we are not going to do a huge piece on the Lencioni dysfunctions of a team model today, but let's just very quickly go through the 5 layers of it. And this is a model whereby we may have mentioned it before, and there'll be a video of it coming out soon, where you can, it's a very nice model to identify, are you good in all these areas to build high performing teams? And if you're not, then you've probably got a dysfunctional team. And if you think of it on a pyramid, the bottom, the base, the foundation, the biggest piece is trust. The next layer up is healthy conflict, which I always think is so interesting because, of course, it's avoided a lot of the time. And that's really about great communication that's robust. The next one up is accountability. The next one up is shared purpose. That's what we
commitment.
Call it. Commitment. No. Yeah, I think of it as shared purpose, but it's the commitment to the thing. I'm doing this, and then the next one up is the actual results, the numbers, the
aligned goals,
and all of those things that you hit. So what I love about that, of course, is like a house. The foundation is trust.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Pen, talk about trust.
Well, I'll just mention, for anybody who hasn't heard of the Patrick Lencioni model, he wrote a book, it was quite a number of years ago now, called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He's written subsequent books, also great. The original book that we're referring to is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. It's really, really worth reading. In fact, it's really worth giving to all of your team members to read. It's a really short book. It's written both as a sort of a fictional but kind of realistic and insightful stories to highlight what goes wrong in teams and organisations. And then he sort of diagnoses and gives exercises to do. And it's all based on this model. It's a really great book. So take a look at that. So we're going to talk about trust today, and we'll get on to some of the other pieces in future episodes of this podcast. So the foundation of trust, and you can think about that in a number of ways, that trusting our teammates, psychological safety, which we talk a lot about today. And in fact, I was also talking yesterday about, there was a project Aristotle done by Google a while ago, and they were looking at who are the most high performing teams in their organisation and what kind of makes them stand apart. Psychological safety, without question. So it's been proved time and time again.
Well, if you think about it, really makes me think of, jumping out of an aeroplane with an instructor, or, trust games that you used to play, as actors. And, those sort of exercises where you fall backwards into, you trust that the group are behind and going to catch you. But we can sort of, bit hackneyed, bit cliche. But point being, if you think about those as touchstones for trust, you literally wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't act at all if you didn't trust.
That's right. And to be clear, it's not the same as liking. Like, it's not the same as, I really love my colleagues. Yes, you can have a really nice friendship in tandem with trust, but it's not essential. You can have trust without that kind of friendship. So it's quite a different thing. And I guess the first thing I would say is, we're not going to spend time on this today, but you will have different ways personally in terms of your attitude to trust and how you build trust. And that will be based partly on what you've inherited genetically, but also how you've been socially conditioned. So some of us will go in with full trust, 100%, and just see if it gets broken, hope it doesn't. Others of us will go in with 0, anywhere in between, and we'll build it up from there.
Just to say on that, because that feels really important, Pen, neither of that is right and wrong. That is based on your experience.
Yes, totally. And you will intuitively make decisions based on probably quite rational reasons. The other thing to say as well is that it can be really quick to build trust when there is sort of identity at play. And by that we mean, for example, if you share a religion or if you're on the same sports team, if you have something where there is a very, very strong shared identity or value set, you're more likely to trust somebody very quickly and very inherently. So there's that to mention as well. So we have different ways of taking on trust. I think one of the most interesting things to think about, which is what we're going to really spend time on today, is we were talking about this, that trust can feel like this slightly sort of magical thing where it's either there or it's not. And regardless of your attitude in terms of how you build trust, do you go in with 100% or do you go in low and build it up over time? We can change the trust game. So if there isn't enough trust in the team or with even other colleagues in different teams or clients that you have to work with, I think we can be in danger of thinking, either it's not my fault or there's not much I can do about it. And that's where this trust building comes in that we're going to talk about today, and actually the different ways that you can think about trust and the different ways that you can build it.
Quick word from us at 4D Human Being. If you're enjoying the show, please do click follow so that you can have the 4D Human Being podcast instantly in your feed. And we'd love it if you liked and reviewed us. Let us know what you think. Please do think of 1 or 2 people that you could share the 4D Human Being podcast with. Somebody who would really benefit from the content you're listening to right now. Back to the show.
So it's not just some magical thing out there that happens.
Yeah, or
that may happen.
Yeah, or some people are trustworthy and some people aren't.
And that's it.
And of course, there might be an element to that. But of course, I was listening to a podcast about, Pablo Escobar. Now, you'd look at a sort of drugs cartel and go low trust. But of course, at some levels within that, there's high tribal trust.
Yeah.
So it's not about good and bad. It's about relationship.
Exactly. So if you think about the team that you work in, and if you think about how much trust there is generally across the team and for you specifically with other colleagues, and I would also offer to think about different teams within your organisation that you work with, because sometimes the trust can be a bit lower with other teams, other divisions. So first of all, think about that. And then think about, would it be nice in any area to have a bit more trust somewhere? And even if you're sitting there thinking, no, it doesn't matter, or it's not my problem to solve. Mm-hmm. Just take a moment.
Yeah,
I think this might be interesting.
They're the a-hole in the team. I don't care. Yeah.
Exactly. They can whatever. So we're going to think about trust in 2 different ways, and also one big kind of watch out as well. So the 2 ways there's lots of ways to think about trust, but I think this is a really simple and really clear way to think about it. One way to think about building trust and establishing trust is personal trust. That's both relationships and vulnerability. And the second way is predictive trust, and that is about consistency and reliability and predictiveness in terms of your actions and behaviours. So the first one is much more relational, the second one is about your behaviours and actions. And these have been proved to be, as general categories, the 2 main ways that we tend to build trust in relationship, and they are very, very prevalent in teams. So personal and predictive would be the kind of summary.
Yeah,
there.
I trust that my window cleaner will turn up and leave a bill in my letterbox every 6 to 8. But it's true, because I'm just like, there it is. It's on the. It's so regular.
Exactly. And I think to a certain extent with both of them, we can sort of accept patterns. I mean, particularly with the predictive trust. Again, I was talking about this yesterday, that when we enter into a role, often, not always, but often, we sort of inherit a set of processes and procedures and the way things are done around here.
Yes.
And that might work well, and it might work well for everybody. It might not. And how often do we sit down and think, right, I'm going to look at how consistent and reliable the processes are across the team.
Well, I'll tell you how often I sit down and think about that, Pen. As I'm charging ahead across the landscape, inventing a new project. Not very often. Yeah.
He's like, so both of these things are really important. So maybe let's start with the personal trust first of all.
Yes.
So I like to think.
Can I share a story about this?
Yeah, go.
So I'm going to bring dance in again, obviously. So my first dance competition, and there was another female there who was dancing from the same teacher as me, and we'd seen each other, we sort of passed each other, but we'd never particularly talked. And I mean, not that there's particularly a reason to, but we're both women of a certain age, we both love dance, but never really chatted. And I would say that was fairly true for the 2 or 3 other women who were there. We did the dance competition, and firstly, we're building a different relationship because we're all nervous. So firstly, we're all suddenly exposing something about ourselves. We're not just sort of turning up to a lesson and, oh, hello. We're going, why are we doing this? So suddenly there's that reveal. And throughout the day, and then we're celebrating each other. And within one day, things have really shifted. At the end of the day, I go to change before I went to meet you and your girls for a pizza. And I'm in the room where everyone's changing with this one particular female that I mentioned at the beginning. And she said to me, God, wouldn't this crazy ballroom world make a great documentary? And she said, imagine all the stories that people have got. And I went, oh my goodness, you're so right. And for some reason, I shared with her that I'd taken up ballroom dancing after the loss of a partner, after he died. I said it was incredible because, and it was I didn't say much, I just said it was really wonderful because what it meant was I was really in the early stages of grief, but for 90 minutes on a Thursday night, I wasn't thinking about anything else, I was just dancing. And I've written an article about that, Dancing Through a Downpour, which you can find on our website. She then revealed that she'd been through something very difficult 2 years ago, and she danced her way through it as well. And the shift in our relationship. Yeah. And it was a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah. There you go. Well, beautiful segue, Phil, onto personal trust. So split that into 2, vulnerability and relationships. I would probably offer that vulnerability is the quickest way to build trust. It's got more risk to it, obviously, because you are disclosing something, you are exposing something about yourself. So you do have to tread cautiously with it, particularly if there's low trust existing. But it's very quick. And we often say, don't we, if you're meeting new people, you're in a new group of friends, and 1 or 2 of them sort of portray their lives as if everything's perfect and there's nothing ever wrong, they don't make any mistakes, they have no self-doubt, it's quite hard to establish a deep trust and a deep connection with somebody. We're much more likely to connect as human beings when we talk a little bit more openly about our shared flaws. So vulnerability can be anything from sharing a difficult story about yourself, admitting mistakes, asking for feedback, anything really where you're just kind of lowering the guard a little bit and sort of demonstrating, I don't think I'm perfect, and I'm sort of happy to share that with you. So it's quick. It's high risk. Just think about who you're doing that with. But if there is a good enough level of trust within your team or with somebody, it's a really quick way to make bonds very deep.
Can I offer a really nice tool to help out with that feeling that it can feel like all or nothing with vulnerability? And I love a concentric circle model. They're almost always my favourite models. And I did this with a client who struggled with knowing quite what to reveal, more for neurodivergent reasons. That if you think about the outer circle, you could tell someone, you go general. So you reveal something, but it's general. Yeah, I've got quite a lot going on at the moment that's a bit tough. And that might be enough. And this is to keep you safe with thinking about psychological safety. The next layer in, you might be specific. I've actually just, an uncle who I was very close to has just died, and I'm struggling at the moment. You might be specific about the event. These are both events. The next circle in, you might say what you think about that. So, I had an uncle that died, and I've really been thinking about loss and spending time with people that I really care about because it's really brought some things up for me. So you might reveal something about your thinking. And then the fourth one, right in the centre of the circle, you might then reveal, and I've actually been having some really difficult times, and I'm feeling quite alone with that, actually. So, so you can actually stage your how much you open to people, because your boundaries are your right,
Exactly.
But it just helps us not feel like it's an all or nothing with vulnerability.
Totally. That's a really good kind of process and sort of levels to think about when you are disclosing.
Yeah.
The other way, certainly in a corporate context, that might be useful to think about vulnerability, it might be, we use a sort of a quick 1+1 model here. So you might say something like, what I was really pleased about what I contributed to this project was this, what I could have done better or what I need to work on is this. Or you might say to somebody, would you mind sharing with me one thing that's been working really well about our collaboration or teamwork over the past month, and one thing that you're not that happy about or you'd love to see better? So you can sort of push into imperfections or mistakes or feedback gently.
And also by balancing, I'm so proud of this. I'm so great at this. And, that's an area, that I could definitely work on. Yeah.
Exactly. And definitely as leaders, if we can model that to our teams, it kind of gives permission to them that, okay, it's safe enough to do that here. That is something we do here.
And that's the 1+1.
The 1+1. It's not only, really, you can think about that in terms of development and growth, but it can be a massive trust builder as well. So that. Can
I just touch on the modelling again, just because I feel, and we will pick this up in the third episode about leadership, but just that you're doing more than simply the 1+1 tool in that moment. You're doing more than building some trust between you and the other person.
Yeah.
The ripple effect, if they talk about it, if anybody else witnesses it or know it's happened or notice the change, you're ripple affecting and you're modelling, this is safe here. So you're exactly. Getting a lot more from it.
Totally. And you're modelling that stepping into vulnerability trust is a way that we do build trust in this team, which, as I said before, it is the quickest way, even if it's got a little bit more risk.
Yes, and there's a watch out there as a leader, isn't there, that if you're going, why don't my people trust me or trust each other, and you're very closed because you think as a leader they shouldn't know anything about you that's in any way vulnerable, then no surprise.
Totally. And then the other side of that, maybe briefly on this, is just more general personal trust, and this is about relationship building. Of course, there's many ways to do this. I've mentioned before, I remember a boss I used to work with who used to walk through the open plan office in the building and just knew something about everybody. And it was such a trustful environment. One thing you can do, of course, is appreciation. And we spoke about this yesterday. And I would offer, for any of you who are working in an environment where you really feel there needs to be more trust, I would offer, pick somebody that perhaps is a little bit more challenging for you in terms of trust levels. And if 90% of what they do fills you with mistrust or disappointment or frustration or whatever it might be, what's the 10% that they do that is valuable? Because if you appreciate them for that, they are effectively getting the stroke for that good behaviour. So they will start trusting you more and then hopefully show more of that trustful behaviour. So appreciation can be really useful.
I had this conversation with a client yesterday, exactly this, that the frustration when somebody interrupts you, or you can see by the lack of poker face that they don't like the idea that you're putting in, and how frustrating it is. And actually what's interesting about this is that in this case there was plenty of liking. So okay, but there wasn't that.
Yeah, it wasn't that.
It wasn't that. They definitely liked the person, really admired them in many ways because they were quite front-footed, but didn't trust their response to when this particular person shared ideas. And I had exactly the same response as you, Pen. I said, what's so interesting is it's a bit like we started with at the beginning of this. You go into that meeting holding your breath, just hoping that they won't roll their eyes or interrupt you, and just hoping that you can trust that either. In fact, there's both there. There's both the relational trust and the predictive trust. Sort of hoping that maybe this time they won't do that, rather than spending that moment a day before or even an hour before building the relationship and saying, I really, really appreciate it when you challenge me, and I'd love us to really make that a part of what we do, and to be to take a moment in the meeting actually for us to it doesn't be so it's not underhand, it's not sort of hidden. And equally, even after, if you feel like the eyes have been rolled, go and have so I just want to check in because I'm wondering if you didn't like it, and I'd love to, because I love hearing your opinion, because you've always got really strong quick ideas, and and I said, you will notice within such a short space of time that behaviour will stop because you've changed the trust relationship.
Exactly.
Invest. And don't just hope and pray.
Exactly, Phil. I mean, it's active management of the trust. And, pulling it back to that Lencioni model, trust being the absolute foundation. I know sometimes we can think, we've got to just make the decision, or we've got to do the thing we need to do, or I haven't got time for that. Or it's so important. It's so important to spend a little bit of time at least on that trust building. So I know it can feel like it's outside of the agenda and it's like extracurricular activity.
But it's like saying in a marriage or a relationship, I know we probably should talk more and check in with how each other, but I haven't got time. And of course, I know that's probably true a lot of the time. But, then you wonder why 10 years down the line, you're like, we haven't really got anything to say to each other. I mean,
Exactly.
it's like, it's so interesting, isn't it? When you say, I'm in a relationship with somebody, and if you look at it and you go, actually, what I'm actually in is a task sharing deal.
That's right. Not relationship.
Not in a relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. And just before we get on to predictive trust, I'm just going to mention off the back of this personal trust, communication. Now, again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. Boy, we love to talk about communication. But as you said right at the beginning, Phil, of course, one of the reasons that trust can not be there or can disintegrate is because there's a lack of communication, or the communication is not done in quite the right way. So there's a couple of things I'd say about this.
That's a very nice way of putting it, Pen.
Yes, I know. That's quite diplomatic there. But there's a couple of things I'd say about this that I'll pass to you because I know you'll have some thoughts. But one thing is, if there is a real lack of trust, and maybe there's kind of silo dynamics and blame games, or maybe there is micromanagement going on, or one thing can be, sometimes it's useful to over communicate. Sometimes you just want to kind of flood the zone, so to speak, with information so that people feel like there's no way anything's being kind of hidden from them. So that can be useful. Not always, but sometimes that can be useful. The second thing I would say on this is this, that I really thought about myself yesterday as well, is that we've got a little bit into the habit of hitting reply all on every single email we receive now. I don't think it's common or usual just to reply to the sender. And I think it's quite an unconscious habit, but I do think it's also, it can be a bit of a CYA, as we call it, a cover your arse email. So I would also check, and it's really interesting. I was talking to some clients yesterday and it really came up, those emails that you receive that are not really about moving the project or relationship forward. They are about
accountability,
covering your they really hit hard in terms of damaging trust. So I know dynamics are not easy, projects are not easy. I would just take a moment to think about the intentionality behind your communication, and is it helping to build trust, or is it damaging?
Well, exactly.
It's worth thinking about.
And there's something really practical to say about that. That with the CYA, if you've got in, I know it's like, well, yeah. What was it? It was I love that in the spy world. What was it? Cover your back. I can't remember. Yeah, what was it?
There was some different.
It was London and Moscow.
Describing London and Moscow rules. I can't remember. They were funny though.
Anyway, cover your ass, and I don't know. That's very unhelpful. We'll come back to that. But actually, what it makes me think is that certainly if you're writing an email, you've got that in writing anyway. That if so, just reply to the one person. Don't copy in their boss or partners or clients, boss's boss, exactly, boss's boss, to make sure that they know, that they can see, well, they can now see that I've asked you this 3 times, and everyone's, exactly. I've put you on stage in the spotlight. The Elsa dress is coming off, and you've got nothing underneath it. Here we are, and exactly. You're completely exposed. You're now naked in front of all of your superiors. But actually, you're right. If you've got it in writing, if it really gets to the point where that it's so uncooperative that you can't get your job done, you've got the piece of evidence.
Totally.
You can, further down the line, you can go and send it. So it's actually not, you're not sending a pigeon that you can't prove you sent. Do you know what I mean? Or smoke signals.
But also, what's more useful is the question.
Yeah.
What's more useful? And again, just as an aside, we also talk about self-management, because of course sometimes other people do things or don't do things that mean that team trust can break down. We also do have to hold the mirror up to ourselves. And of course, if we are annoyed emotionally flooded, we have to think about our own self-management in terms of what we are then contributing to the reduction of trust in the team.
Absolutely. Well, the word I'd written down to come to in communication is irritation. I hear the words irritation and more actually frustration. The word I hear the most is frustration, really as a pseudonym for absolutely raging. I'm a bit frustrated. I'm like, you're not, you're raging, aren't you? You're absolutely raging. And when the emotions are high.
The fingers are tapping.
The fingers are tapping and the rational brain is going, totally justified. I'm going to annihilate them and I'm totally in the right, and it all makes sense in the court of yourself, because you are judge, jury and hangman, oh God, we've all been there. Yeah.
So anyway, that all of those things and so much more, but all of those things come under the umbrella of personal trust. So the second way to build and manage trust is predictive trust. And I do really like this. I mean, I do have quite a lot of blue and process in me, Phil, don't I? In that, again, if we are working with somebody who is reliable and consistent, like we know that Bob has to deliver his numbers on a Friday, and every Friday at 9 a.m. I get an email from Bob with my numbers. Great. We don't tend to stop and think, do you know, one of the reasons I really trust Bob is because when he says he's going to do something, he does it. Like we often don't really think about it. It's just inherent. Oh, me and Bob seem to have a very trustworthy and reliable relationship at work. Of course, we can build that if it's not there, both in terms of getting processes in place for the whole team, but also in terms of how we operate. So goes without saying, in terms of how our brains will sort of interpret things over time, if people have done what they said they will do when they will do it, we will inherently trust that the next time they say they're going to do it, they are going to do it. Obviously, I mean, it's obvious. And yet we have to watch out that we don't just kind of accept, well, in some areas of my work, there is that kind of predictive trust, and in others there isn't.
And that's full stop. And that's how it is. And that's the concrete world that never changes because there's no evolution. It's a static world that is fixed.
That's how we do things, right?
Yeah, that's how we do things. That's right. Nothing can ever change.
Yeah,
that's right.
So this is,
and I'm not a part of it. It just is.
Yes, it's just how it is.
It's just how it is. Yeah, that's right.
It just happens.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah. So part of this is, of course, holding up the mirror, your own self-reflection. How sort of reliable and consistent am I in terms of how I operate and what people see? That's one piece. But of course, the other one is if you stepped into a role and you sort of inherited. I mean, now I think about this back in my corporate days. You will have just inherited a pattern of doing things, and you probably won't even use the word processes for how things happen. They just happen.
Yeah.
I know we're really busy. If you have time to kind of look at how processes are working, particularly within and amongst different teams, you might be surprised that some things might be missing that would be really easy to put in place.
Yeah.
That would massively increase the trust.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, how about a predictive, how about one that just bundles the whole thing up, Christmas, Easter and birthday rolled into one, which is, that 20-minute Monday morning meeting that is for no business, it's for nothing else. Everybody always comes. That's absolutely predictive. It's absolutely vital that you're all there. All you do is talk about what's happening with people in people's lives or how they're feeling. You're building a relationship. It's predictive. It's reliable. Everyone's there because you are committed to the team and each other. That's all it's about. I mean, it's just an example, but it becomes a process. And we talk a lot about task versus relationship. If it's all about task and getting stuff done, even with the best will in the world, even with the best predictive, where you're sort of churning out like a machine, you're so reliable. So you've got that high trust like a machine would. Even with that, at some point, you're going to get some human feelings in there, and if you haven't got the relational bit, it's still risky. You need both.
You totally need both. You absolutely need both. We had some really nice discussions about this yesterday, because of course people do feel quite differently about these two different types of trust. For some people the relational is all important. For other people, they don't feel they need as much of that. They need the predictive trust. So you think about a diverse group in a team, you have got to have both of these things. And both of them are buildable, so to speak. Yeah. It's just a question of, on the predictive trust side, it probably is a question of sort of taking a step back. But I would offer, when something goes wrong, in a team or between two teams, I would definitely look at what's not been consistent, what's not been reliable, and what has or hasn't been the process there. Because some of these things can be super easy to put in place.
Well, it's such a good point, isn't it? And actually that goes to both process and to trust, is when things go wrong, those are the portals of opportunity, not to patch it up and go, oh, the magic didn't work there. Anyway, carry on we go. Let's hope, in sort of wartime thought is, let's hope for better things next time.
Exactly.
Actually, what's happened here? This is the moment for surgery. This is the symptom that's saying something needs to happen here.
Well, and also, how often do I hear the people on the ground? I so often hear things like, well, if we just did X, Y, Z. Yeah. But that doesn't happen. It escalates all the way up the chain. And I'm just like, well, why don't you just do that?
Yeah. You've brought me something that I think I can bridge into doing a few minutes as we finish on good comms, good communication, is those questions that get asked in irritation. Why doesn't she just? Why didn't he?
Yeah.
We hear those questions all the time from clients. Well, why didn't they? And actually, if you take the tone out, that is a really good question to ask.
Yeah.
Why didn't they get back to you on that email?
Yes.
What is the answer? Get the answer to, because those questions that come up in anger that we're flinging out as criticism, they are really the question. That happens so much in coaching and therapy, where somebody asks a question in sort of irritation with a family member, and you say, let's answer that question.
Yeah.
Let's really answer it. That is the question.
That's going to reveal something.
That's going to reveal something.
Yeah. I read on LinkedIn the other day that the CEO, I can't remember the name of the company, unfortunately, but he has 40,000 employees, and at least every 2 weeks, ideally every week, every single employee in the company has to send him 5 ideas for things that they could do slightly differently. And he reads at random, a huge amount, but he picks at random, 300 or whatever, 100 a day or whatever it is, and he reads them.
How wonderful.
Isn't that wonderful?
That is wonderful.
I know.
That is great.
I love it.
That's great communication. So let's talk about communication in relationship to building trust. I'm going to say the word email. I mean, we've banged on about it so many times, but it's just such an issue. Like, get off email. If you've got any issue with trust, email is not, you might as well have 2 paper cups and a piece of string. Like, in fact, it's not your medium of communication. It just isn't. It's the worst thing you can do. So pick up the phone.
Well, I suppose it depends. It depends, but we definitely overuse it.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm sort of going blanket, because meaning, I'm making a sweeping generalisation, really, so that you stop and ask yourself, hang on a minute, before I tip and send, particularly at 10 o'clock at night, stop. When we have difficult feelings over somebody or something, most people, unless you've got a pattern of aggression stepping in that way, a lot of people will avoid the relevant person and talk to everybody else but that person. This is where we get silos, which is another issue, of course, with trust, is that you end up with small silo groups. We can end up avoiding stepping in to the conversation. And really, for both communication and trust, you want to step in. You really want to pick up the phone, leave the voice note, ask the question, get active. And I love the phrase for this, that is, you're not afraid for the reason that you think you are, that you've got old patterns playing out, maybe fearful of confrontation, fearful of conflict, and so therefore you avoid. You are always, pretty much, there may be exceptions, but you are usually going to be better off picking up the phone and having that conversation. So the first thing is to really build trust is, don't move away. When you open up those gaps, that's where great team collaboration and trust just falls through. So step in, pick up the phone, grab that video call. If you can't get them in the calendar, then simply leave them a WhatsApp or a text or a voice note. If we have a lot of clients who stay in difficulty or lack of trust or difficult relationships, firstly because they're staying on email, and secondly the the reason that comes is I just can't get a place in their diary, or I drop off their diary. And actually find another way. Always just find another way. Call them at a bit of a random time, lunchtime.
Yeah.
Leave a voice note on your Slack or Teams or whatever you use, or WhatsApp. Find a route through and make it much more spontaneous. You are much, much, much better off stepping forward and realizing you're not afraid for the reason you think you are. There's a pattern playing out. You don't have to go in with a fight. You just have to make contact. You just have to communicate.
Exactly.
I want to talk about very quickly the cycle of communication. So this is a real old school comms piece, but we often feel like we've said something and we're done. And that is not the cycle of communication. We've said something. Has it been understood? Has it been heard? Have they absorbed it? Could they repeat it back to us? Do they understand what it means to them? Are they going to do anything about it? Are we checking in? I mean, that's a very quick précis of the communication cycle. But how do they need to hear it? It's not really about what you want to say. It's how do they need to hear it? And if you are not thinking about that, you are going to fall off the communication cycle, like no question.
100%.
It's no, if you're saying to somebody that can't happen, this is the danger, you can't do that, and that's it, and you can feel that they just push that aside. You're dealing with somebody who needs the possibility and the positive. And the analogy I gave is it's the difference between standing on the ground and saying to the astronaut in the rocket, your rocket's going to crash and burn and it's never going to land on the moon, and saying to them, I'm going to sit next to you as the co-pilot and I'm going to help you get as far as we can.
Very different.
I don't know, there are things in the way here, and I need you to know that means we might not make the moon. I'm going to help you get as far as we can. Or, you're
very different.
You're trying to get to Mars. I'm going to be with you and make sure we at least get to the moon. We are going to get
100%.
somewhere. And that is a very different way to communicate to somebody.
Well, we slightly redraw the Lencioni model, don't we, where he's got his pyramid with trust, healthy conflict, accountability, commitment, and then the shared goals and results. Of course, we have communication just threading through the whole lot.
Communication and narrative threading through the whole thing. Exactly. So the last thing to say on this is our core piece on communication is it's not just about what you say. In fact, quite often it's barely about what you say. There's 3 core things that I think are important in communication. 4. One is what we just said. How do they need to be communicated to? If they're not hearing you, stop banging your head against a brick wall and feeling frustrated because you're communicating in the clear way that you know and love. They are not receiving it. So how do they want to be communicated to? The second thing is less is more. Don't try and communicate 20 things. What's the one thing you want them to hear? And the third thing and the fourth thing are energy and intention. So if you're being solid and rational and reasonable and giving someone information and wondering why the team doesn't feel great or the trust isn't there, try dialing up your energy, because energy is the glue on which communication sticks. And secondly, what's the intention behind it? Because if the intention behind it is I am going to say this again and you are going to hear me, then you're just caught in the same pattern. As much as you're communicating, you're still caught in the same dynamic.
I would ask yourself exactly that. Am I being intentional? And if you can ask yourself, will my response increase or decrease the level of trust in this relationship or team?
So shift from they are driving me insane and I'm irritated with them to play a different game. Set an energy level 7 and put the word in your head, playful, excited, open, warm, because they're expecting you to come with the we don't trust each other game. Go with a different game.
100%.
And we talk about that a lot, change the game. So you've got a lot of tools throughout that. We call that last one team quality boost, that rather than wishing there was more playful energy or collaboration or enthusiasm in the team, why don't you put that into the team? So you've got lots and lots of tools throughout today. Trust, that's both vulnerable, personal trust and predictive trust. And think about communication. Communication. In fact, I'm going to offer you this last tip. For the next week, spend 80% of your time communicating a lot and brilliantly and positively to everybody in your team, and only 20% really thinking about task, and see what happens by Friday afternoon. Good stuff. Enjoy. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with our second episode on collaboration and being good to work with. So you can ask yourself in the meantime, are you good to work with? Take care, and we will see you very, very soon.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the 4D Human Being podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Do take on board some of the insights, tools and tips, because every time that you try something new to get back to choice, you are making a vote for the you that you want to become. And I love that phrase, Pen.
I do too. And please do share this episode with somebody that you know would really benefit from the lessons and learnings we've been chatting about today.
And of course, if you're interested in more from 4D Human Being, do get in touch. We run workshops, trainings, online, in person, conference events and keynotes. We've got the 4D On Demand platform for your whole organisation. And we do have a free Essentials membership where anybody can sign up for absolutely free to access some of our insights, tools and tips. So do get in touch with us if you'd like to hear more. We cannot wait to hear from you and to carry on the conversation.